Mmm.
It's your girl Kayla Ebbe. One of the best parts about the ECC is that I get to see current and former students and just have a great conversation with them. And tonight I get to interview for an Educator shout out interview, Caerwyn and Schuyler. Get ready. What is that, Caerwyn?
Welcome back to our channel.
What's that channel?
The ECC.
Educator Chipotle Challenge.
Oh.
The ECC channel.
Woo!
Hey y'all, it's Kayla Ebbe with the Educator Chipotle Challenge, doing an Educator shout out interview with two of my former students. Y'all are gonna be in 12th grade this year.
That's wild.
It is wild. You were part of my first 7th grade class at DB.
So we're like the first group of students that have gone all the way through.
Yep.
Wow.
Exactly. Yep. Life goals. School counseling goals right there. Shoot, I can't believe that I just threw up a hashtag. Gosh, I'm still not really a big fan of hashtagging, I just gotta say. Even though there's
You do a ton.
I do a ton. What's the maximum? 30? I'm pretty sure I do 29 or 30 every post. I'm just trying to get it out there. Yeah. So, who are you two?
My name is Schuyler Shumway. I go to the Vinci Charter Academy in Davis, and I am a senior.
Hey.
I'm Caerwyn Henderson. I also go to Da Vinci in Davis, and I'm also gonna be a senior.
Exciting.
Almost
Super
done.
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it.
You got this.
You got this. Are you coming to graduation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is
like
good news.
Let's see, I started going when my first year's 9th graders graduated, and my goal is to definitely see you graduate as well. First 7th grade class. So I'll be there.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forget it!
Yeah! I'm so ready.
Educator shout out interview, here we go!
Come on, get subscribed.
Every time I say it,
Yeah.
we're a little bit more aggressive, so they know that we really mean it.
We really mean you guys need to like it. Watch the video.
We kindly appreciate it.
Not scary.
Promise.
We'll
Okay.
make a
What do we-
song to get you on Ellen.
And that can be
How's
the
it gonna
intro
go?
song
To all your videos. Oh my gosh.
Wow,
What's
we
it
have a
gonna
lot of
say?
songs to be making.
We are.
But that's the top priority. what is that? What's that song again? What's that gonna be?
Give me Sebby on Ellen.
Get
Yeah.
on
Woo.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one.
That was it.
All right, Schuyler, let's start with you. Name and describe one or more educators who have had a positive impact in your life and how they've made a difference for you.
Okay, the educator that I am choosing to shout out is Mr. Lagunas. I had him for 2 years during my junior high experience, 8th and 9th grade. He taught me 2 different subjects, history and leadership. The reason that I'm shouting Mr. Lagunas out is the experience I had with him in those 2 different subjects and not just in one. So I think that specific to me and how what he taught and how he taught it was my favorite part. So for history, that's my favorite subject, but I also find it one of the classes that is very particular for teachers. So if it's one of those things where if you're really interested in it, it's easy to make the assignments fun and make the way you're teaching it to the students really interesting, especially with a school like Da Vinci where it's project based and presentations and everything like that, and it's not as much of lectures and stuff. So it's easy that when it does come time for lectures and learning the history behind stuff, that you're interested in it, because then it makes your students interested in it. And so that was my big thing, is that as far as the education side of it goes, I had the best experience with him out of the way that he would teach us. You could tell that he was so passionate about what he was teaching, and so it made you more interested and more excited to go to class and to listen to what he was saying and do the homework and everything that goes along with school. And then I got the opportunity to have him in another subject, and so having leadership and history be so different, it was cool that it was the same teacher showing me those 2 different things. And so as far as leadership goes, I saw kind of a different side of him, where it was more of obviously being the leader and showing us these are the skills you're going to need, and when it comes time for like school events or anything like that, you know, you are kind of the ones like being seen and the ones in charge and everything like that. And so getting a teacher again that is so like passionate about that and already has those skills going into it and already is like the person who can be in front of a crowd and everybody loves and stuff like that is really nice, because then when he's like, when that person is teaching you those skills, it's very authentic, and it's not as much of like reading it from a textbook or, you know, having heard it from previous teachers. It's knowing that that's who the person is and that they're just like very open to sharing it. And so out of like both of those experiences, I think that it's just getting those teachers where you're like lucky enough that like what they're teaching impacts you more than it would just reading it out of the textbook is what impacts me the most. Like I don't like feeling like what I'm hearing I could be reading, you know. And so getting a teacher like that is really passionate about it and then has the mindset of like, you know, my students, especially at a small school, this isn't always the case because it's not always so easy, but at a small school, like being able to build the student teacher relationships is an easier thing. And so I think that with a teacher like that, where I'm already getting so much help like academically, it was really nice to have that be a classroom that was open at lunches and like just a teacher that I knew I could talk to even like outside of class and stuff like that. And if anything was going on that maybe wasn't related to school or anything like that, it was still a teacher that was open and that I like felt comfortable going in and talking to, and overall just made that experience better.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
I would like to shout out Lil Vicky, aka Victor Lagunas. Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Lil Vicky.
Here.
Yeah.
And Caerwyn, name and describe one or more educators who have positively impacted your life and how they've made a difference for you.
So I've narrowed it down to 3 teachers.
Wonderful.
I'll start with Mr. Wizard, who was the English teacher for 9th grade and maybe 8th grade.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, so he was an English teacher, and he was the first English teacher I had that made me actually like English. It was always a subject that I kind of didn't enjoy. I enjoyed more like the science and math, and English had always been something I kind of dreaded. But he was a teacher who was really like genuinely enthusiastic about what he was teaching, and he found a way to relate even like books that were hundreds of years old that were really boring. He found a way to relate it to all of us and like something that we like, and he found like the most interesting projects for us to do, and he made everything that was English related seem really fun. And it seemed like you weren't even like doing a project or doing schoolwork. It seemed like you were just like doing a really cool activity, but at the same time you were learning so much. And that was the first time I ever like really enjoyed my English class, and I really like had a good time. I felt like I was learning stuff, and I was like reading these interesting books, and I was looking at things in a much different way than I was used to, and it was very life-changing for me. It made me really enjoy stuff like that. And then my second teacher would be Miss Sangster, who was my English teacher for sophomore year. And she was, in that English class, it was one of the first times I really had to write like a bunch of essays. And that was something that made me very nervous, because that was not something I had done very often. It was not something I was very good at. But she would offer so much help and so much support, and she really like made me understand that you can like write an essay about something and genuinely enjoy it and like learn more about it and understand it deeper. And it made me so much of a better writer than I ever was before. And I was really nervous going into it, writing all these essays, like, you know, oh my gosh, I see a 5-page essay, like that's impossible, I won't be able to do it, I won't do well on it. But she would sit there with you, she would like help you plan out how you're gonna do it, make sure it was organized, make sure you're doing well. And then when she would give it back to you, she would give you like actual useful comments and stuff that would help you really like improve on your writing, and like it would make you be more interested the next time you read a book, because like you had a different insight on it, and it would make you really think about things. And it made me like really care about like the books I was reading in English, instead of just like, oh, I'm supposed to read 5 chapters every night. I'm like, oh, I'm reading this, I'm supposed to look at it from different points of views. And it definitely broadened my horizons for English stuff. And then the last teacher would be Miss Pickett. Miss Pickett was someone I actually knew as a child for a really long time before I came to school. She was like a family friend, and my brother was friends with her son, and so I knew her for a long time before going to school. And when I started in 7th grade and she was our social studies teacher, I was like, oh, that's so weird that like someone I know outside of school, like someone's mom is like my teacher, like that's gonna be so weird. She's probably gonna be like completely different, like super strict, like do this, do that. And I was like, I don't know what to do, because like that's so unlike her. She always been a very like chill, nice person. Like she took us to see High School Musical in theaters, and like she's my teacher now. But even like in a school setting, she was very like understanding and like open with everyone. And so even though we were like learning about like the history of like how America started and stuff, she would still like respect everyone's like views on stuff, because sometimes when talking about history, people like to have crazy views on stuff for whatever reason. And she's like able to like incorporate everyone's ideas and like make everyone feel like they really like were included and were a part of this community. Because especially going into 7th grade, it can be a bit of a change, and it can be kind of scary. Like you're going to a bigger campus with like more people, and it can be really like daunting. But she did a really good job of making me feel like I was part of a community, and like, you know, I always had someone I could go to, someone I could talk to, and like someone who was always there for me and would always listen and not judge. And that was really helpful going into junior high, which was like a very stressful time. And you know, she would always be there for people. Like I remember one time we were stuck in her room for like 3 hours, and like we had a lockdown, and we were in her room. Yeah, and it was like a very scary situation, but she was able to like calm us all down and make us feel like she was like giving us Kit Kats, and like you can tell that she like genuinely cared about her students, and like not just like what grades they get and how well they do in her class, but like how their lives are going, make sure they're actually happy and like they're supported. And it's very nice. And now that she comes and helps at the high school now, you know, it's cool to get to able to see her again, you know, and talk to her. Like the other day she came with kittens.
Oh.
And that was so cool. I was like, cool, we just bring animals to school now. I'm here for it.
I'm here for it.
I mean, if you can
Come
bring
in.
pets, like,
I'm going to also.
yeah.
Give me Ebbe on Ellen.
Give
Yeah.
on
Woo.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one.
That was it. I love Chipotle. Chipotle's my life.
Yep.
You should just be there and just be like, I love Chipotle.
Chipotle is my life.
Oh my god, so you do it really well. That's your intro. I got
Oh my
you.
gosh. I love Chipotle. Chipotle is my life.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank
That's
you.
your intro. Yeah.
Miss Ebbe, if school counseling does not work out, you can just say, Chipotle is my life.
Yeah, go for
All
it.
right, Schuyler.
Okay.
Okay. Swerve. From your perspective as a student, what resources are necessary to have at school that support students' mental, social, emotional health and well-being?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer it from like kind of a different perspective, because I think that like the basics obviously are needed. So as far as like paper and pencils and all of that type of stuff that maybe you just can't assume like every student gets, you know, so like what's needed in your own classroom, maybe have some extras to provide to students and everything like that. So like the more like material side of it. But I think that like a really big thing, especially if we're looking at like the mental health and like well-being and all that type of stuff for students, is just kind of like not necessarily like the school overall, but like providing the students with like the teachers and like the staff and stuff like that, with like, and having the staff to help the students, you know. And like I feel like it sounds like that should be like a given when your role is like an educator or something like that, to like be helping your students. But I think it like goes beyond for certain like areas. So like maybe like depending on what you're teaching and stuff like that, where you don't think that it's as much of like I'm influencing the student, it's more of like I'm teaching them the subject, you know. And so I think having schools where it's clear who those teachers are, and like you know, for every school, like having the counselors, like that's a big thing. Like I feel like the counselors should be the people that like you know, so like maybe you don't know all the teachers because you haven't had all of them, but having schools that have good counselors and just have good ways of making it known who those counselors and teachers are, you know? And so I think that's a big thing. Like, it was the beginning of the school year, and I think they do this every year where they like introduce all of the staff and what their like role is, what they teach and stuff. And I think it's like a big thing because that's a good way of saying like these are what they teach, but then like here's like the counselor. And so like if you ever need it, like this is where you go for that help, because I feel like that's been the big thing for me is like knowing my counselor and feeling like I can like go to the counselor's office is then a big thing, because then no matter if it's, you know, like the more like mental and like family side of it, or if it's like the education side, it's like I know those people that can help me with either, you know. So I think as much as like the materials and stuff like that are helpful like in the classroom, it's also helpful to have the schools have a way of like making it known like who the people are that can like really help you when it goes beyond just like your classroom and your schoolwork.
Thank you for sharing that. Caerwyn, from your perspective as a student, what resources are necessary to have at school that support students' mental, social, emotional health and well-being?
Similar to what Schuyler said, I think it's important to have people at the school, whether it's counselors or teachers or both, that students know they can go to and like they can talk to about anything, whether it's school or like something more personal. And you know, people like adults at the school that the students can have a connection with and like feel comfortable talking to, which I think really helps, because like at Vinci we have counselors and stuff who like go out of their way to make sure that, you know, they have a connection with their students, that their students feel comfortable talking to them, like going in and like so that they have the help and they have the support they need for anything. And I think a lot of teachers are very similar with that. They want to connect with the students on a more than just like I'm your teacher and I'm here to teach you way, so that every student can think of at least one person at the school that they can go to who they feel comfortable like actually talking to. And I think Da Vinci did a really good job of that, because like even though like some of these people aren't necessarily my teacher, like they're not necessarily my counselor, I still feel like I could go and I could talk to them if I had a problem. And they give you a lot of resources. Like there's ways you can go online to access your counselors, so that if you don't want to go in person, and they make it really clear like who can help you and like how you can get the help and like how you can reach people. And they just make it very clear. They don't make it like a big deal to like go talk to the counselor, which I think sometimes that can be like, sometimes there's like, oh, you have to go talk to the counselor, and there's like that like thing around it that can make some people uncomfortable. Which doesn't make sense, but it's something that's there. And I think making it clear that it's not a bad thing to talk to an adult if you're having some problems, and it's not bad to like talk to your counselors, even if it's not school related. Like if you're going through something, that like talking to these people will help, and like it can help, and it's like someone who's there for you at all times.
I appreciate that you said that, because I know that I say that at the junior high, and I know that Miss Strand and Miss Roper at the high school probably on almost maybe not quite on a daily basis, but at least in our introductions try to debunk those myths of, or the stereotypes or that stigma that it's negative, or like, oh, you're going to see the counselor, that must mean this or that, when in actuality we do so much more than just talk to people when they're having a hard time, but also talk to people when they're having a hard time, and that it's okay to reach out and ask for help to an adult. Awesome.
Could be no sun, but I sunburned. It's just the magic of being this way. Oh, you're having fun.
Just us getting upset.
We're talking and I turn, you just making faces in the sun.
All right, Schuyler, what advice would you share with your younger self?
I think after going through like especially junior high and then getting the first few years of high school, kind of relating back to like what this whole thing was about in the beginning, like the whole educator shout out part of it, I would say like focus on building those relationships with your teachers, even if you aren't necessarily at a super small school, so it may be a little bit harder. But I think that building those relationships not only makes that class that teacher is teaching a little bit more fun and more exciting to go to, but it's also just another person that you have there for like support, whether that is for their subject when and if you struggle, or if that's outside of the subject, at least you're building those connections. So I would say that just like, I would just tell myself like, focus on, while it's still like your schoolwork and your friendships and stuff like that, also take it like a step further, because I feel like when you think about school, it's the education part of it, you know, and so it's more of like, oh, I have these classes that I have to go to and this is what I'm learning in each class and stuff like that. But I think that it's important to also think about like, okay, but this person is also taking the time out of their day to teach you that thing that you're learning. So like, show the fact that you're grateful for that and be able to like build off of that, like further than just like what the education is. So be able to say, you know, like, I liked what we learned today or something like that, but then also say like, be able to have the connection outside of just what the class was. And so saying, you know, like getting that connection with like, I'm struggling with this, I need help, and then boom, like you already have that like chat with the teacher and you already are building that connection, and just kind of focusing on that and making it so that like, whether it's junior high, high school, elementary school, anything like that, that you have kind of an easier time for yourself. Because I feel like asking questions, and whether that's like in the class, like to students or to the teachers or anything like that, is super helpful. Because if you don't do that, then you're kind of stuck in that like rut once you get into a problem. And whether that's like with your outside life or if that's with the subject, it's like, if you don't say anything about it, then it won't go away. And so it's a constant thing for you. So I think just knowing that people are there for you, whether that's students, teachers, counselors, anything like that, if you like use your voice and if you tell people about it, then you'll get support in some way for it.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Schuyler. Caerwyn, what advice would you share with your younger self?
I think the advice I would share with my younger self would be to like find balance. You know, balance between, you know, doing your schoolwork and like getting good grades and trying your best, and also balance between like more on the social side, like finding friends, finding people you have like real connections with, and also kind of like growing as a person. Because, you know, like through junior high and high school, like there's a lot of change going on in life, and like sometimes it can be hard because, like, you know, you want to get the best grades you can possibly get, and so you want to spend all this time like preparing for school, but you also want to spend time with your friends and like making these connections with people and like figuring out who you really are and what really interests you. And so I think finding a balance between that is probably the advice I would give myself.
And I think that's a great segue into the last question, which is a little bit more broad than yourself. Is there anything else that you would like to share with educators or students watching? Is there anything you'd like to share with the class?
I would say maybe for like the educator side of it, I feel like I've like touched on this a lot, but as important as it is, like I was saying, for like students to like reach out and get help when it's needed, maybe just like for the educator side of it, like know that even though there can be stigma around the fact of like being an educator and like teachers and stuff like that, it's like as much stigma as there can be, there's also so much like, I guess, like appreciation around that. And so I think that for educators, like knowing the fact that being a teacher, being a counselor, anything like that, you're in one way or another, you're like impacting somebody's life. So I think that for educators, just knowing that and like being aware of that is a really big thing, because I feel like that can, you know, obviously like I'm not in that position, but I feel like it can be a hard thing to like remember that, you know, and remember that like when there's like a bad day and you feel like maybe like, oh, I didn't make a huge impact with any student today, it's like, okay, but in the long run, like you have and you will, and like it'll, like that'll change and your feeling will change about that. So I think as much as it's like you're helping the students and the students are aware of like reaching out to teachers and stuff like that, I think teachers should be aware of that, like the position they hold and how much people like respect that, and I guess kind of like use that to have a way to like help students and kind of reach out farther again than just teaching the subject they're teaching.
I'm gonna echo what you said and what she just said, because like I've been doing this Educator Chipotle challenge now for 331 days. Yeah, thanks. 331 days, and have recorded, I think about 34 interviews, and many of them have been current and former students. And a big part of why I'm doing these educator shout out interviews are exactly what you just said, like to help educators remember or to hear it, whether it's the first time or just a few times into your career, that you are making a difference. And it can be challenging to remember that, or to know that, and to know it. Sometimes you don't know the impact that you had on somebody's life, and to be able to share these stories, I'm hoping that that comes across a little bit more clearly.
And I think that's hard. Like, not for every teacher, like, you're not going to see a video like this where, like, your name is mentioned, or you're not always going to have those students that are, like, open to coming into you and saying, like, wow, like, like, thank you for doing this, and this, and, like, directly showing you that you impacted it. But I think doing stuff like this, where maybe you're listening about other teachers in the same position as you are and stuff like that, you get a sense of knowing that, like, wow, somebody who's doing the exact same thing as me has touched, like, these people's lives and have had this impact. Like, I probably have too. And it's just like, you're not maybe hearing it directly, but it's like you're getting the sense of, like, what I'm doing overall is impacting people. So that's, like, a good thing, Yeah,
absolutely. Caerwyn, is there anything else that you would like to share with educators or students watching?
Similar to what Schuyler said, I think basically every teacher and counselor and someone who's had that type of role in my life has left an impact, and I respect them and I appreciate everything they've done for me. And even though, like Schuyler said, you don't necessarily say their name, you don't necessarily, like, maybe even tell them to their face that they've had an impact in your life, and, like, you appreciate everything they've done for you, they definitely have, and they played a big role in your life at one point or another. And I really appreciate everyone who's taught me something, whether it's something small or something big. And it's crazy that this is, like, it's all coming to an end also.
Yeah, it's wild that I caught you, like, right at the tail end of your high school career.
Yeah. Oh, I guess also that could be for students, like, enjoy. Like I know sometimes school can be, like, difficult, and there can be bad days, and there can be, like, rough parts. Like, sometimes homework is stressful, and, like, you can have problems with friends, and, like, it can be difficult. But, like, looking back at it, like, I would definitely say, like, appreciate it and, like, enjoy it. Like, enjoy the growth and, like, the moments where you learn something new, and it's just it's a fun time, and I say appreciate it.
Yeah. Now I'd say one more thing about the, like, educator side of it is that, like, being aware in, like, the educator side, like, for them, is knowing that, like, whatever your role is on, like, that campus or whatever is not, like, your only role. So I think, like, when you're a teacher, you're not just there to teach your subject, you're there to, like, you can also have that, like, counselor position. So maybe you're not, like, the one that is said, like, this is who you go to for the counseling and stuff like that. But it's knowing that when you're a teacher, you can do more than just teach these students, and then when you're a counselor, you're still teaching them, So it's like, just because your title is different than somebody else on the campus, you both can be doing the same thing. So I think, like, teachers can still be helping outside of the curriculum, and counselors and stuff like that can be teaching them, and again, like, not necessarily, like, subjects and, like, that type of thing, but like, life lessons, teaching them lessons based off of, like, what they're telling you about and stuff like that. But knowing that, like, your, like, title on the campus isn't, like, your only, like, role for the students.
That's a good point to add. All right, ladies, thank you so much for participating in this educator shout out interview, and I am so proud. I mean, just having these conversations, just enjoying this meal and, like, this time with you both, and reflecting back to the fact that I've known you for almost 6 years now. That's wild. And so incredible to, like, see the growth during the 3 years that I had you at the junior high, and then to, you know, have little snippets of seeing how you've grown in the last 3 years of high school. I'm so proud of you, and I am so ready to be at graduation next year to see y'all graduate and move on and just like make such a big impact in this world. And I will speak for myself when I say that, like, it's students and humans like you both that, like, sure, I go to school sometimes and it feels like work, but mostly I just get to go to hang out with you all, and it's so fun, and you are a big reason for me wanting to do school counseling, for me to want to do this Educator Chipotle challenge. You know, it's about educators and supporting students, so keep on doing what you're doing, girls, and stay sassy and classy and fierce and go change the world, okay? Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Schuyler, who did you shout out today?
Victor Lagunas. Lil Vicky.
AKA Lil Vicky.
Lil Vicky.
How would you spell that?
Lilvicky. Or just CY. He doesn't have a K in his name.
It's true.
Whatever
Good point.
you want to do.
Whatever works.
It's up to you, Mr.
No,
Lagunas.
it's, yeah.
Yeah,
You're
the
right,
person
you're right,
can
you're right,
decide.
you're right.
Maybe.
And Caerwyn, who did you shout out to today?
I gave a shout out to Mr. Wizard, Miss Sangster, and Miss Pickett.
Hootie hoo!
Yeah.
Yeah!
I was supposed to do a woohoo where he's like the two claps.
Oh yeah, you ready?
She did not like that.
Oh.
Do they get candy?
Oh.
Yes.
Hated every second of that.
Oh, what part? Just right now?
Yeah.
Great.
You were
Okay,
so
so
sick 'cause you
we're-
never got recognition.
Boy, I got one the first day. It was the very first day of Woohoo's, and I
The
got
keys?
one.
Much love, keep it real.
Peace.
Like and subscribe.
Welcome back, guys.
Welcome back to our channel.
The Educator Chipotle Challenge channel.
This week we will be talking about, should you get a dog, yes or no? The answer is always
you were
yes.
going somewhere with that.
The answer is always yes, you should get a dog. But I recommend adopting them from the pound. Rescuing your dogs if you can. But sometimes you can't. Because sometimes you go to the pound and there's really not that many dogs there.
It's a really good story time.
Thank you. That's why I got my dog.
Next on ECC. That was good, right?
And if you want to get a cat, you can just take them from the neighborhood.
She went outside.
There are
It's
plenty.
yours.
That's how I've gotten 2
Wonderful.
finders keepers.
Loser speaker.
And that's it for today's video.
Comment, like, subscribe.
Come back next week for more on whether or not you should get a hamster. That one's a no. You should not get a hamster.
I haven't.
Yeah, I'll pass
That's
on that.
bad.
I'll
Is
hard
hamster
pass
in
on
there?
that.
You should get a
Oh, it is?
lizard though.
Yeah, right.
Sure. A lizard?
Everyone, comment down below your thoughts on lizards. Thank you. Is that your thought on
Thanks
lizards?
for taking the time.
Well, I will be reading all the comments. Okay.
Will you be responding and
Yes.
genuine feedback?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a celebrity.
Did you
response
know
to your
turtles
stuff.
are so expensive? Like,
Schuyler, we'll start with you. What resources? Oh gosh. Schuyler, let's start with you. Name and describe one or more educators who have made a
like this video. Give it a big
Comment,
thumbs
like,
up.
and subscribe.
If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe. Turn on post
Let us know.
notifications.
Yeah, the little bell in the corner. I don't know which corner. I don't know which corner.
Let's just cover all of our bases.
Yep.
It's over there. It's up there.
Hit it.
Follow us on Instagram.
Click it.
Yeah, all social media platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Make sure you
LinkedIn.
hashtag get Miss Ebbe on your show for Ellen DeGeneres.
Heck yeah.
Ellen, if you're watching this, we would love to be on the show.
Feel free to take all 3 of us.
Yeah.
Mainly.
We'll send the audience. It's okay.
I mean, good thing we have a small school. I mean, you could just like send our whole crew.
Our whole
which is-
school could be your audience.
Yeah.
We'll do all the recording and sound stuff.
Yeah, I got your job. It's
Well,
fine.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll be the people that hide and scare people.
Oh, and that
Oh.
little thing in between her seats. Oh, we
Yeah.
got it.
Oh, I mean, talk about problem solving, collaborating. I mean, there's plenty of people who do videos and editing and all this
Hire us,
stuff. Like,
yeah.
the whole DV crew could really
We
be
got
part
it.
of your set.
Yeah.
And because we're underage, you don't have to pay us as much.
Yeah.
That's like just how it
It's a
works.
win-win on both sides.
Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. So, Ellen,
Heard it here first.
can't wait to hear from you.
Give me Sebby on Ellen. Yeah.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
I think it's a good one.
That was it. But
Short.
make sure.